Hey guys, it's Abby. It's one of those days, you know, when putting thoughts together is difficult. And I swear my brain is just like moving through mud. I thought, since I was due to give another chat anyway, to record one, that I would use this opportunity to work through some thoughts, some feelings in a way that I hope is relaxing and maybe helps your brain move through things a little more clearly. As you could tell, my brain is not working today. Oh my gosh. It's just like I had all these tasks I need to complete that are mental power driven, and I have not been able to tackle any of them. So yeah, there's that. But I don't want this to be a downer chat. That's not the point of this. This is a bit of a ramble, something to relax you and to let you know if you have days like this. Yeah, there's a lot of us out there who feel the same way sometimes. So I just thought I would kind of walk through / work through my thoughts on being a writer and all that entails. I've been writing in some capacity or another since I was probably, gosh, how old was I? 9? I think I was 9 or 10. I wanted to be a writer, like someone who wrote regularly and got paid for it in some way, since I was very, very small. I've always loved books in one way or another, though my love of reading didn't start until I was about, I would say I was 12 or 13, and then I became obsessed with reading. I'd put down a book a day, read through a whole book a day. Children's books. Well, not like picture books, like chapter books. And as I got older, that continued. Excuse me. A little drink I have. My own coffee that I put together. It's, let's see, caramel decaf. I do decaf coffee. Caffeine makes me crazy. I turn into a lunatic. Yeah, caramel decaf coffee. Like, I think it's like caramel corn, but it doesn't taste like popcorn. It's just caramel. And then it has about halfway almond milk, original, unsweetened, almond breeze, and a fourth of it is ice, and then the rest is the coffee, and then a sugar-free sweetener that's a Mexican hot chocolate flavor. It's really yummy. It tastes like, chocolate-covered caramels and coffee. So, a dessert. And yeah, it's quite delicious. Though I think I'm going to try to get away from the sugar-free sweeteners. I tend to only do a few, and not all the time, but I know a lot of them have problems that may be just as bad as consuming sugar. So I'm really gonna try to just not indulge in them as often. It's like this race against science to figure out what are we allowed to eat that isn't going to harm us in some way or have some lasting impact. And I'm losing the race. I can't keep up. But that's okay too. we aren't going to keep up, and that's fine. Moderation. So, not to go on a tangent there too badly, but the coffee is delicious. Let me have another sip. Hopefully that translates well. I am experimenting with my mic at present in terms of these chats, because all my chats, like when I'm actually just speaking to you as a person, not in a role play, they've all been on my cell phone, and there's that grainy quality, that very human sound of it. It's not heavily edited unless there's just terrible noises that are interrupting the flow, or I have to like truncate it in some way. But normally it's pretty raw, and it's obviously unscripted. And I don't normally use my good recording mic for that, because I kind of do those chats on the fly. I have a thought and suddenly I need to speak to you about it. Kind of like my personal confidant. Maybe that's weird. It just works for me. But I also thought I should do some higher quality audio recordings that are chats. So since I needed to ground myself, and I thought maybe some of you needed that too, I thought that we could do these chats here in my recording space. Sorry, my voice will be more formal, I think, just because I'm in that mode. I'm at work, I'm not just like chatting in a parking lot or like under the covers or something like that. But hopefully we can discuss a few things here, and I'd love to start a conversation. I mean, feel free to comment on my audios, respectfully, of course, but, sharing your thoughts, what's working, that would be great to know. Topics that you want brought up, maybe, that could be an option, giving me ideas. I mean, I have a lot of things to talk about, but I'm always willing to hear about more. So yeah, back on track. Oh man, you can tell I'm just going down that yellow brick road. It's just like leading me. Writing. Right. So as I said, I didn't like reading that much, other than, children's picture books, until I was about 11 or 12. And then I got obsessed with chapter books. I had a stash of older, like from the 80s and 70s, chapter books that were my sister's, and I found them, and I think they were a little more mature than my age group had warranted. I was like 11, 12, 13, and they were talking about, romance. It wasn't like, overtly described or anything, but there was some, emotions involved, and I was barely, interested in boys at that time, but it was a fun read. And yeah, so I devoured all of those. I think there was maybe 20, and the beginning of the summer I had those gone. And then I thought, okay, what do I do now? So then I started going to the library, and I would go down to the young adult section. So I think I was 12 when I started going to that section. And I remember I would go there a couple times a week. My parents would take me to the library, And I would just go to that section and I would just start grabbing books, an armful of books. And I think I went maybe once a week there, maybe twice. Depends on if I ran out of books. This was during the summer. During the school year was harder because I was in school at the time, in public school by the age of 12. And so that was a bit of a distraction. But I could still do some reading, and I did. I read a lot of books. I think that's when my love of just a physical book happened. I would get so excited when I'd see a book that I wanted to read, and I'd hold it in my hands, and I just knew it was going to be good. And I'd take it home, and I'd snuggle in my bed. I always read in a bed or in a chair. And I had the book open, and I was voracious. And I would just dive into that world, disappear into it completely. I would completely forget about anything else going on. And I think that was helpful for certain things in my life. And also just, I was very imaginative, and life was boring, I wanted to do and see the things in these books. Some of them were, realism, but most of them tended to have a fantasy or sci-fi or supernatural quality to them. I was really into ghost books, spooky ghost books, not like true stories, but young adult fiction that had a ghostly element. I really loved those, and those were popular with me for about, I don't know, a couple years. Still are in some ways. But yeah, so I destroyed the young adult section, and by the time I was 15, I think, I had read pretty much anything that was any interest to me. And yes, there were new books coming out, and I would read those quickly, but at the time, I don't think there were as many authors producing as there are now. Like, now we're kind of inundated with creative writers, which is a good thing in some ways, and I think it also makes it hard for each of them to stand out because the market is just much more full. So yeah, they couldn't keep up with my reading, essentially. So once that was done, this entire time I was reading these books, and I would have writing projects. Like, I would write for school, and I always enjoyed that. Creative writing projects in school, even analytical writing projects. I always enjoyed doing those because I had read a lot. I had a decent vocabulary. I had a command over sentence structure that some of my peers didn't yet. I think it was just simply because I read so many books. It was burned into my brain. And so I started doing writing projects of my own. I'm trying to think. So when I was very young, I was about 10 or 11, I wrote a fantasy story. I think it was like 40 pages long, 35 pages long, probably huge print, because I don't know, I didn't understand about formatting back then. And it was about a girl who, I think she got knocked out or fell asleep in the woods somewhere in modern days, and she was transported into the realm of these little people, essentially fairies, but not exactly. They didn't have wings. They were just small people. So maybe a little bit like Gulliver's Travels or something. But I hadn't read that. I just liked the idea of these tiny people. I've always been obsessed with tiny little things, and so I think that's where that came from. And yeah, so I wrote the story, and I'm sure there were parts of it that were maybe actually very good, for a 10 or 11-year-old writing, and other parts were rough, like probably most of the parts. But I remember when I wrote, as I was writing it, of just how much fun it was to be engrossed in this story for an extended period of time and to be living in this world that I'd created and have complete creative control over it. That I remember really, really loving. So, yeah, I wrote that. And then the next thing I wrote that was of any length, I think it was a supernatural based story. It was potentially going to be longer, but, I lost steam. I was only, I want to say I was 12 or 13. I was in 7th grade, or right before 7th grade. And I remember writing it. It was modern, and it was because I was reading these ghost-based stories of these girls who would go to another town. They always were going to another town, like for the summer or for a different school or something like that. There was like 4 of them. I'd have to look at what they were. I'd like to reread those just to remember the nostalgia of that. But they were a young adult, and I remember thinking, oh, I want to write like this. This is something I want to write. And so I did. I wrote, I want to say it was like 65 pages of a story. I don't remember a lot of it now, but there was ghostly elements, and she was visiting a family member, and I think there was a sibling. Anyway, I'd have to look for that. I wonder if I still have that somewhere. But I remember wanting to read that to the class so badly that I asked my teacher. This is in 7th grade. I mean, I was such a weirdo. I begged my teacher, basically. I mean, in a very, mature 7th grade way, that I could, on one of our free reading days, when she would read from a book, I asked if I could read something of mine. And she said yes, but she'd have to let me know when. Oh my gosh, it was torture waiting for her to tell me when I could read this out loud. And this is how I knew I wanted to do performance, actually, was this and other events like it. I was so excited at the idea of reading out loud the thing I had written that I would ask her almost every day. I mean, she had to have been losing her mind from it. I must have been so obnoxious. But finally, after 3 months of asking, because, she had her lesson plan, she couldn't just interrupt it for me. She said, okay, this is the free day I have. Go. And I went up there and I read, and I was so excited. And, some of the kids were like, oh, this is boring. A lot of the kids were like, oh, this is different and interesting, enough that it kept their interest. And some were enwrapped by it. I don't know what I was writing that they thought was so great, but that was very sweet of them. They were just staring at me oh, and then told me afterwards how great it was that I had read this, which as a 7th grader is not something you hear a lot. So yeah, mixed reviews. No one was mean about it, which I thought was really nice. And they all kind of considered me a good writer. They knew to come to me if they had questions about writing or if they needed help with something, and I would offer it. So I think that helped them be a little kinder. So that was the next thing I wrote. And again, I loved the writing process for that. The thing I wrote before, I think I took on a writing project every summer. Aside from reading, just so much reading. But the next summer was the summer I had to paint my bedroom. And I hate painting. And I had asked my parents, I'd begged my parents to redo my bedroom into a jungle theme. I loved the idea of living in a jungle treehouse. And so they helped me pick out all of these new things that fit that motif. Over the top. Jungle, animal print, stuffed animals, bamboo, curtain things. And I wanted to paint my walls like clouds. So it was a pale blue with a fading from the top to the bottom, and then clouds. I had no idea how to paint clouds, but I loved this idea of looking out from my bed and seeing the sky like I was up in a treehouse. Well, that took me all summer to strip the wallpaper off of my room and scrape it and prime it and paint those clouds. I mean, maybe longer than a summer. I was so lazy about it. I hated it. And so the whole time I was doing this remodeling, they didn't want me in my bedroom because of fumes or something. So I was in the bedroom next door, which was really just this tiny little room, had a window. That was it. And a bed, a twin bed. It was probably a guest bedroom or something. And I camped out in there and I wrote a choose your own adventure the whole summer long. I had music playing. Every time one of the songs that was on that CD comes on, I had, no, not CD, it was a CD collection. It was like hits of the 70s or something. And every time one of those songs pops on, I'm instantly transported back to that bedroom, super late at night. It was so late. I was up till like 4 in the morning every night. Oh, and I loved it. Oh, I loved it so much. And I would sit there and I would write my choose your own adventure and figure out how to like organize each of the scenes. And I had like a lettering system that would work for transferring it to page numbers so that I could do the choose your own adventure, style where you have to turn to page 312 if you decide to do this. Okay. So I wrote this choose your own adventure, and oh my gosh, that is one of my favorite summers of my whole life. And I don't remember anything else of that summer except being up in that bedroom every night. I had like a glass of water or something like that, and my spiral notebooks. I think I had 2, and my pencil, my mechanical pencil, and my music playing on the radio, which I don't know how my parents weren't upset that it was playing like while they were asleep, because they were right next door, but maybe whatever. I think my parents, especially my mom, was actually mad at me because I was writing so much. I didn't want to spend time with anyone, and it was the summer, so family time, but I was having none of that because I was a teenager. And this is how I rebelled. I just remember like the window would be open and the air would be coming in, and I'd be listening to the night sounds, and I'd be writing and writing and writing. And that was one of the times where I just knew I wanted to be a writer. Okay, so then high school happened, and I think freshman year I started reading. I had destroyed the young adult section, as I mentioned, and I had I needed more reading material. And by this point, I was completely boy crazy. I don't know. I had crushes. A lot of crushes. I'd have a crush on a guy, every few weeks. There'd be something about a certain someone that would draw my attention, and then I would just see them, and I don't know, get all butterflies and tongue-tied and want to fight them. I always had this thing about wanting to argue with all of the guys that I had a crush on, which I'm sure was extremely discouraging and terrifying and off-putting. But that's where my attention always went. I wanted to have a good, strong argument with somebody. So I think this is why I always want to write arguments in my writing, because I find it so sexy. I don't think other, 8th graders thought that way, but that's where my head was. So I was seeking out something new to read, because I would have several summers as a middle schooler, and then a high schooler, right? So I I got involved in the adult romance section. This was because my best friend at the time introduced me to a book called The Outlander. And I read it, and I was in love with it. The writing was amazing. The vocabulary finally matched where I wanted to go. The content was mature, and I was happy to consume the whole thing. I think it was like 400 some pages. And then I read the next one and the next, and I think that was all that was out at the time, were the first 3. And then I thought, well, this is kind of a romance novel. Let's go check out the romance novel section at the library. And I did. And then, well, I read a lot of those. Some were better than others. I quickly figured out authors that I really, really liked, and authors that I read 1 or 2 books and decided they weren't for me. I got a lot more discerning as I got older, and I would devour those books. I'd read 1, a night easily. In the summer, and I did that all the way through high school and into college. It wasn't until college ended, I think, that I finally stopped reading romance novels. Not intentionally, just that's kind of what happened, which I'll get into later. But so while I was reading these, I decided I wanted to write one. And the authors I was reading back then, some of the first ones I read were Julia Quinn, and she is a strong writer for dialogue and cute, kind of flirty romance with absurd scenarios. You'll recognize her stuff through Bridgerton. And so I'd read most of her books, and I don't mean just the Bridgerton series. She had a lot of spin-offs. And I thought, oh, I kind of want to write like this fun, flirty, dialogue-based story. So I started writing a book, and that book ended up being 100 pages, I think, in total. Much more reliable page lengths, too. These were full pages, so at least 250 words a page, maybe more. And I started off in the woods surrounding an estate, and the 2 characters chatting. They'd kind of stumbled upon each other, and they each had their agendas and their goals, and they were flirting shamelessly in a argumentative way, and also trying to get what they wanted. And it would have all been great if I actually ever got them to leave the woods. But at that time, I did not know how to write plot. I could write dialogue. I could write characters. I could write description. But plot eluded me. And I want to find that writing at some point and just see how I managed to write. I swear it was 100 pages. And they never left the woods. They didn't even go very far. And they were just talking. They talked and talked. But writing that was really fun until I ran into the issue of, not knowing how to continue. Then college happened, and I stopped reading as much because I was reading so much for college. I bet I'm not the only one who had experienced this burnout. I would be reading, 2 books a week. These were not fluff fiction. These were intense works or long plays, and analyzing them and writing responses to them, discussing them. And that'd be every week, and I'd have a paper a week on the thing, and then every month another longer paper requiring research. And I became fairly good at writing. I also I didn't double major, but I dual focused my major, creative analytical writing and creative writing. And I also, I took part in workshops and writers' workshops and such. And that was fun. But by the end of it all, after 4 years of that intensive writing and reading and talking and analyzing, I didn't want to write anymore. I didn't want to read anymore. I wanted to be done. And that was a blow. That was really hard to realize, that I was so tired of it all, that I couldn't even pick up a book with any joy. I mean, these were my friends growing up, like as a teenager. I adored books. I couldn't even pick one up with any enthusiasm at all. I could barely read the first couple pages without just instantly having this reaction of, oh no, I can't do this. I didn't want to write for fun at all. I couldn't put an idea down. And that was also a loss, because here I had these beautiful memories of spending time with myself, getting to know myself through my imagination and how I expressed it on paper, and I couldn't do it anymore. And I'm not saying it like it was this huge tragedy, but it was sad. I was very sad. I felt like I lost a huge part of myself, because here I was trained to be a writer and an editor, and I hated it. But I continued on. I got some regular jobs initially, and then I started doing freelance work here and there, and I I'd been editing my mother's books since I was about 15, and, obviously improving as the years went on. And so I continued to do that, and that was all right. I became a good editor, and I think that's what I am first and foremost, is a good editor. I can take another person's ideas and make them better. Better presented, more fleshed out, whatever. And I enjoy it. I can still enjoy it. And then about, I'd say 3 years ago, 4 years ago, no, maybe more, 6 years ago, right, I moved back to my hometown, and I had to be running around a lot, taking buses and things like that, walking. And so I started listening to audiobooks. They were the kind, I think they're called playaways. I'd get them from the library, and you just put batteries in them, and you plug your headphone jack in, and you can just listen to a book, single book. And I started doing that, and I enjoyed that. But I still couldn't pick up a book and read and have any kind of pleasure from it. And so that slowly morphed into more and more audiobooks over the years, and not an excessive number, but here and there when I needed something to listen to. And then in the last, I'd say, year, I really started listening to Audible, listening to books, mainly classics, books that I have no patience for normally, let alone when my brain is being slow. And I wanted to hear them read out loud, because I thought this would be a way I could access them and enjoy them. And I was right. I love listening to classics being read by a strong voice actor. It is pure enjoyment. It is diving headfirst into that beautiful world of language that has been created and has been kept alive. And I love it. I have also since listened to some standard books, non-classics, and those have been very enjoyable. It really comes down to the voice, though. The voice that I'm listening to. If I can't handle the voice, I can't listen to the book. It doesn't matter how good the book was. Which brings me to my current, I don't want to say job. It's not really a job. I am trying to put in part-time hours on it, 20 hours a week. And I would like it to become a full-time job or a good part-time job. But right now I'm just trying to reach out to people. And it all started with, I wanted to write a book, a series of books. And I had been stumbling for the last year or two. I had ideas, not very well fleshed out ones, and they were kind of rolling around in my head. But I had no energy, no motivation, no creative drive. But I wanted to do this. It was something I wanted for myself. Regardless of if I ever could sell it to someone or get other people to listen, I wanted to create a 4-book series. it was something I had wanted to do my whole life. And I thought, okay, I am at the position right now to at least put the time in on this thing, as opposed to just sitting and watching YouTube or, mindlessly, watching a show or something. I would have the opportunity to do something creative. Sorry, my voice is turning into dust. And so I started it, and I kept restarting, and I couldn't get anywhere. And then, I don't remember the exact order this happened, but I somehow came across a ASMR roleplay. Not the ones that I had been watching. I've been watching ASMR since, 10 years for anxiety. Females, mainly. And I stumbled across, I have no idea how, but I stumbled across an ASMR artist that had written a acting role play, one-sided dialogue. And it was so good. Not that the dialogue was like perfection or anything like that. It was more about hearing the voice of a person actually saying the words. It gave it realism in a way, and validated that realism, that these words could exist in the world being spoken by someone else, which as a writer, sometimes that's not the case. You'll write something and you'll read it out loud and you'll imagine someone actually saying it in real life, and it's absurd, right? And that's okay. Sometimes it just exists on the page. But I, as a performer, as someone who enjoyed performing my whole life, who has done acting, I always wanted to write something that could be read out loud or said in the real life. With, some variation. It didn't always have to follow that rule, but I loved that idea. And so, I gotta slow down. I came across this writer, and the ones I was listening to initially were his original works, so I admired that, and they were enthralling. And I kept thinking, wow, this is so fun. He gets to write his scripts, and he gets to perform them the way he imagines them. And he's getting to create these worlds, these little tiny worlds of character and mythos. And I mean, it just got me so excited to be writing again. I hadn't had this drive to write something. And it was hilarious because my initial instinct was thinking, oh, I could write something for this artist, right? Like, oh, here's this perfect voice and this talented actor, and I can do the script. That would be so exciting and so fun. Right, okay, you have to have, like, I had no portfolio. I've been writing forever and editing and doing all this stuff professionally, but, I didn't exist anywhere other than other people's content, that I had done. And so, of course, that request was ignored, rightfully so. But then I thought, wait a minute, why don't I write my own scripts and do my own acting? I love acting, especially if I don't actually have to put on costume and have a set and have cues that I have to remember and work with other people, because I'm not a team player. I am. I can do it, but I usually have to be the leader. That's generally the mode I get into. But I thought, well, this person did it one day. I mean, I think he'd been voice acting for a while, so he knew how to do it well. And I didn't. I had no idea. But I thought, if I just do this for fun, with the hope of developing a skill set that maybe I could make money at some point, so I could actually do it more regularly, like I'd have the time because it would be making me money. I should take that chance, at least to try it, at least as a hobby that could lead to more. And so I started with the voice acting, not voice acting so much as, voice presentation. Like right now you can't tell that because my voice is full of gravel because I've been talking so long and it's so unnatural. I will work on that. That's something I have to practice, relaxing my voice, my throat, as I've said 1,000 times. But I started just by having a conversation with you in the tub because I was the most relaxed there, and it was quiet and it was dark and I had a little candle going, and I felt safe to put myself out there in this way that I had never done. I'd always thought my voice was horrible, terrible, obnoxious, annoying, and I come to realize after listening to other role plays and voice actors that there's no real such thing as an annoying voice. It's more about certain people find certain things about a voice attractive and enticing, and that there would be people potentially out there who would find my voice interesting to listen to, especially if I develop skills to use it differently. And I better have another drink. I mean, my voice is full on crackle now. What a journey you'll have gone on. I should really practice relaxing my voice more. We'll do that here. So, my brain had been switched on after years of not really functioning properly. And then it just went crazy. I had all of these ideas for role plays that I want to do, and chats and styles of audio ASMR that's not visually based. And I just couldn't turn it off. And I hadn't had that type of creativity in a long time. And I was so excited and so grateful that it was back. And I started writing again on my book. And I've had some hiccups. I've had some ditches that I've fallen into. Ruts, I guess you'd call them. I don't know, I'm kind of driving off into a ditch. But overall, I've been able to reinvigorate that love of books and reading and writing again, because suddenly I had these voices in my head, other ASMR artists, writers and such, that were kind of just getting me going, getting me started, getting me excited to try something. And so, I started writing role plays, and then I started writing my book again. And now I figured out a system to establish plot. It's a lot easier than I thought. I actually knew what I was doing. I just didn't know how to put it down on paper. And now that's worked out a lot better. I'm still intensely in the writing process and the plot process, but I'm plotting out 4 books at a time versus just the one. And so that's very promising. And more importantly, I'm enjoying it. Sometimes it feels like work because my brain isn't moving very quickly or it doesn't feel inspired. But it's not like before. Before there was just this dark empty where all that passion was, where all that excitement was. It was just gone, vacuumed out, sucked out. And now it's back. It just sometimes gets shrouded by a little bit of like mist. We're going to go into the creepy mode. And whenever my brain starts to feel muddy or the doubts come in, which they do often because I have anxiety and depression. I know the doubts will come in inevitably. I just listen to that original ASMR artist that I like, and suddenly I feel like I can write again. And it's so bizarre because there's nothing particularly addressing that issue, really, in any of his things. It's just a reminder that you can do this thing too. If you are excited about it, I have the skills. I've worked years developing them, and they'll continue to develop as I get better and better at things. And I have the imagination and the creativity and the drive to do it, and so why not? And I know that's not the message in his stuff, but that's just what it translated to me as hey, you should do this weird thing that you want to do. So it comes out in this channel because it's a great opportunity for me to explore a lot of parts of my creative mind. I can be an artist because I do like art. I've taken classes and I've enjoyed it, and so I get to practice that a little bit. I get to write creatively with a romantic influence, which I love. I love writing romance. I get to work on my voice acting, my general acting skills, because I am writing scripts. Even if they're one-sided, I have to still think about presentation and how am I accessing emotion when I'm saying these things. And I get to work on my organization, which I love organizing. I'm an organizing fiend. That's one thing that's, if I can find a system to do something, watch out. That's why the plot situation with my book became much easier, because suddenly I created a system to do it, and it kind of wrote itself. I mean, I wrote it, but, it was, can I speak? It was a lot easier. What else do I do? I like singing. I'm not a singer. I will probably post more singing because I like to do it. And it's not that I'm looking for anyone to say, oh, you have a great voice. That's not the point. I just think it's nice to remember that not everyone is a singer. But we can sing, and we like to sing, and we can all sing together, and that's great. Yeah. I think that covers the things that I do in this channel that give me joy. So right now I'm currently working on my book, and it's 200 pages so far. It's going to be a long book. I probably will release it digitally because I've done the print for books before. I wrote a children's book under a pen name, and it was so expensive, and costs are so high right now. So I think I would do a digital release for that once I get it done. And that would be the case for the rest of them, unless, a publisher picked it up or something. But if it's self-publishing, it's going to be a digital release for ease of that and lower capital investment. But yeah, I have about 200 pages, and I'm only on chapter 2 or 3. And it's not fully fleshed out because there's 2 simultaneous plot lines that are running throughout the most of the books. And I'm only really focusing on the one set of characters, and then I will shift gears and focus on the other. Just because I think it's easier to do it that way, and then piece them in so there's a natural, it's naturally broken up by one scene or the next. I have been working on the art for that book, and I've also employed an artist to do a different portion of the artwork for that book, the character art. I am doing the chapter art right now. I've got, I think, 3 chapters done in terms of that art, like the opening page. I wanted a piece of art for each opening of a chapter. And I understand what my characters look like now because of my artist friend that I am employing. And that's really great. And I'll probably have him do a few more pieces for the book so that the characters are outlined in some of their key moments. And then I want to write 3 more books because I already have them figured out. I know what's going to happen. And I'm really excited for it, but sometimes on days like this, it's hard to sit down in front of the computer and write those words that you want to be so good when they come out, and then they're garbage. Or maybe they're not garbage, but you think they're garbage because your brain tells you they're garbage, or you're tired, or you're cranky, or your stomach kind of hurts, or something, and it's making everything seem bad and not good. And so on days like that is when I kind of lean into the channel, because there's things that I have to just do. You know, you have to go on autopilot. I have to record the Foley work and fill it all in piece by piece. Some of them are so intensive, and I really need to find a better way of doing that because it takes a long time. But I am proud of what it is like when it's done, because at least I know that I put in a lot of effort, and I was very careful in my choices. But aside from those things, just the audio, I mean, even editing my voice, taking out the plosives and cutting out if there's too many that weren't supposed to be in the script, which I'm actually fairly good at doing a straight read, or whatever you want to call it, of my script, because I wrote it. I wrote it for myself. I know what those words are. I know what I'm going to say. I know how I'm going to say them. And so I don't stumble very often. And I use the punch and roll method to limit how much editing I actually have to do there. But editing all the Foley work in is a slow process. Oh, it makes me so tired. I am happy with the result, but if I could just produce audios that had no Foley work and it was all just my voice, oh, I totally would. I would totally go that route. But I know that's not as professional, and it's not as engaging, and I can accept that and suffer through the Foley work. I just like making sounds with my voice, though. I'd much rather do that. Even if I had to come up with ways to make new sounds, I would do that, which I have. And I have some lovely sounds that I've practiced that I'd like to integrate into some characters. And then doing the not safe for work stuff is super fun. I love doing that. So if you are not a Patreon listener, if you're listening to this on YouTube, do check out my Patreon, because I have several not safe for work exclusive cuts, and they're lengthy for the most part, because I really have a good time doing those. I love writing them. I love acting them. Even Foley work for those is a little less boring. So yeah, you should check that out if you're on YouTube listening. If you're already on Patreon listening as well, thanks. Yeah, so that's kind of where I am. The writing process might have to have another chat, which that's cool with me. This has kind of helped me sort out like where I've come from, like how far I've come as a writer, and how much I do want to do this. I don't know if I'm going to get paid for doing it, but I want to do this as a core part of my identity. I want to produce things, and I want others to read them. I want others to enjoy them. I think that's maybe my biggest dream. It's not to have a bestseller or something. It's just I want to regularly produce content, written or otherwise, that others are reading or listening to and are getting pleasure from, enjoyment. They have a fun time. That would make me so happy. I'm kind of realizing this right now, like that is my dream job, but also just my dream self, getting to do that regularly and someone loving it that's not related to me or a friend, someone who doesn't know me and found value in what I've produced, into what I've put out in the world. Yeah, that's what I want. I don't think it's too big of a dream. I think it's worth putting time into and becoming good at. I just don't want to be one of those. I do want enough people to see it I want to reach an audience, because I don't want to be one of those people that never published anything. Like, I can do self-publishing, that's fine with me, but I don't want to be one of those people that never published anything, and you always know that they're a good writer, but they never did anything with it. Like, they never took the time to put it out there for others to read. I want to have put it out there at least. And so I can do that here in little doses, in my role plays that I write. And those are fun. And I will do it in my book series that I'll produce under my other pen name. Yeah. So, what a big talk. That was a long one. Hopefully, it's bored you to sleep. That is one of the goals, or relaxed you. Hopefully, maybe it's inspired thoughts of your own. If you're thinking about doing something that's creative or whatever, just go for it. Just try. I think you will hate yourself more for never attempting than if it fails. I feel like that's the way it is for me. It is a bummer when it fails. Believe me, I've had some failures. And it does feel sometimes like you've wasted time. But there's also part of me that feels like I've learned things about myself, and I've developed skills that I would not have had unless I took on that project. And I would not trade those skills and those experiences for having not tried and, not facing failure. I wouldn't trade them. And I think that's called maturity. Maybe I'm slowly maturing as a human. Oh, you'd think I would be more mature by now, but I'm not that mature. Everybody always thought, like, you're in your 30s, you've got it together. When I was a kid, I thought, 30-year-old, oh my gosh. Well, 35. I'm 35 years old. Oh my gosh, they have their lives together. They know what they want. They're doing it. They have a career, house, all this stuff. Well, I've got some of those things, but also I have no idea who I am or what I'm doing sometimes. And I'm freaked out a lot about it. And I'm trying to be an adult and represent myself as an adult. But it's not that easy. And I start to realize maybe that was everybody I was picturing actually was going through this at 35, 36. Yeah. So, well, this has been about an hour, and hopefully that was something you could listen to fall asleep, or while you're working on something, or needing to de-stress about your own stuff, because I do rambles. I listen to rambles for the same reason, and maybe I can be that person for you, and I would love that. Maybe another day I'll talk about my writing process that I've slowly worked out, in case it will help you write, if any of you are writers, or even just creative thinkers. Sometimes you need a process, and it can mirror what a writer does or what an artist does. So yeah, thanks for listening. If you have, and it's okay if you haven't, because the goal was just to put this out there in the universe and get it out of my head, so I can feel better about what I am and what I do and who I am. And it worked. So thank you. Thank you for providing me this outlet and being there, or, being asleep, letting me chatter into your ear. So, yeah. So I will sign off. I won't say sweet dreams in case this isn't a sleepy video for you, because I did get a little animated there. It might have been very distracting. And I look forward to future chats as we kind of figure ourselves out. Okay. Well, bye-bye.